Hey everybody, how's it going? Vash here. Wanted to get back to you guys on my thoughts with Granblue Fantasy Relink. The demo has been out for a bit now, and I finally got my chance to play through it. And I've got to say, just right out the gate, I was, thoroughly impressed with how great this game handled. Now, before I get into all of my thoughts on the game, I do want to state that my interactions with Granblue Fantasy is very, very limited. I really don't know too much about this game, the story, the characters, or anything that the IP has to offer other than the fighting game aspect of things. I never played the mobile game. I really don't know too much about how the story unfolds. And so my opinion is going to be something of a new perspective, I would say. That's what I want to bring to the conversation, and that's what I want to showcase here when it comes to my, feelings and what I felt going through the game and going through the demo. So I did get to go through every aspect of the demo. I did the tutorial, the story, and also the online multiplayer. And starting off with the tutorial, I wanted to get more familiar with the controls before I jumped into everything else. And straightforward, the tutorial did a pretty good job of showcasing different aspects of the combat. It doesn't really give you too much info on how you interact with your teammates other than the link attacks and also building up your arts through combos and how that affects your moves alongside other moves that could be used with your teammates. But all in all, it's a pretty standard tutorial. If you're on a ship and you're fighting this dummy robot thing, it shows you about dodging, it shows you about guarding, and all in all, solid tutorial, nothing too crazy, but pretty much what you would expect from a demo leading into more combat and more scenarios where you could use all these different skills. Going into the story mode, you can kind of see which characters are the main ones, of course. Everyone is showcased in all their HD glory. I think it's really cool how you look back at Super Nintendo games and just to see how far we've come since then. But yeah, you can see the regular NPCs that you interact with, and then you've got different characters that are being introduced to the player. And since I'm new to this story, I can definitely tell which characters are the ones that are the standouts because they're designed. Overall, all the designs are really, really cool, very well done, and I'm really just captivated by this style. I think that it's a storybook come to life in a way, and it's exactly how I envisioned all these older RPGs in my brain when I was younger, and just seeing it in the full HD glory, as I mentioned, it's just really nice. It's really cool to see how they've accomplished so much with these visuals, with having the characters interact with each other, voicing all of them, having all these different animations and such. And of course, like other RPGs, there's reused animations for certain dialogue, all that stuff. It's all here, but there's definitely nothing to snooze at when it comes to the world of Granblue Fantasy. I'm so impressed with how much detail and how much character is given to every aspect of the game. Being able to interact with different aspects of the world, having a dedicated jump button is always a good thing in my book when it comes to an RPG or just any kind of action game in general. I think that the way you progress through the levels is very organic, and there's a lot of exploration. I was surprised that we were on these floating islands from what it felt like, and you still had ways of going about finding different items, finding different surprise scenarios. There was one section where I actually fought a pot, or I tried breaking a pot behind one of the structures, and it ended up being an enemy, and I was so surprised by that. I was definitely not expecting such an interaction, I guess. But yeah, the game oozes charm. All the characters have their own unique way of moving throughout the world. They've got their weapons and clothing and hairstyles that all work to their own needs when they're moving around, and they have their own personality. You even have little stickers and little emotes that you can go through, which are really, really cute and charming. Kind of reminds me of Dragalia Lost in a way. I remember using those in that mobile game I would play. But yeah, I was very, very enamored with the world itself, and we're not even getting to the combat yet fully. And speaking of the combat, we can go ahead and go over to that. I think that there is a lot to be offered here, especially The one thing that I want to highlight right out the gate is it doesn't let you have this showcased in the story mode, because for whatever reason they only limit you to being able to play as Gran in the story mode. But all the characters have their own unique play styles, and they all have their own unique skill sets that make them very distinct and different from each other. It was so cool being able to do that in the multiplayer, and I'll definitely touch on that more, but I really wanted to stress the fact that you've got a pretty big cast of characters to play as, and they're all different in their own way. We'll get back to that in a little bit. But overall, the story, it was pretty straightforward. It's what you would expect from a fantasy RPG. You're going through helping townsfolk, fighting down goblins, and trying to save the day, at least with the surrounding area, trying to save whoever's in the surrounding area. There's a leveling system, there's gear, there's different equipment that you can have on different characters to help progress them, and in the demo you don't really get much of that right away, or at all really. I don't think I found any weapons that I could swap out, but I know that there is a gear menu, so we'll be expecting that. But as I mentioned earlier, the idea of having this storybook aspect of the game is just so cool. Everything feels like how you would think in your brain. Okay, you're in a medieval fantasy realm with all these different characters and these hybrid humans and everything, and it really does that so well. I've always, from afar, been so enamored with the art style of Granblue Fantasy. I think it's such a wonderful mix of old school RPG just different types of games that I've played in the past, like the Mana games and the Final Fantasy Tactics and stuff. It kind of reminds me of that in a way. And then on top of that, the overall presentation of the UI. Now that's something that did kind of take me, caught me off guard a little bit, especially starting the story mode section. Was the UI was a little bit all over the place. You've got your party on the top left, you've got your items that you use in the bottom left, you've got your skills and all of the different menus that you activate whenever you hold down certain buttons for your skills on the bottom right, and then you've got numbers flying, you've got all these things you have to keep track of, and then on top of that, you've got all these wonderful, amazing features and effects that are being triggered from all these different attacks that your teammates and you yourself are doing. All in all, I think that visually it looks amazing, but for me personally, when it comes to my experience with other RPGs, I'm a huge fan of the Tales of series, so this action-oriented combat with party members was right at home for me. I felt very at home. Having all the enemies, all the allies calling out their different moves and shouting out each other and saying, hey, good job, good work, yeah, let's do this together. It was awesome coming back to that kind of RPG, but being more action oriented and more, just high octane in a way. And so yeah, I found that very appealing, but the UI also reminded me of other games like Xenoblade Chronicles, for example, where you've just got a whole vomit of of elements from the UI all over the screen. And so that's going to be something that I think that people need to find out if it's for them or if it's too much of an overload, if you find it not too distracting. This video, what I'm trying to accomplish here is I'm putting out my thoughts of how I feel about the game, but I also want to try to help people see the good and the bad and find out what they think about it through my eyes in a way, if that makes sense. Because I know, games are not for everyone, and some people might like the certain things that this game offers, but then other people might not. And so, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, the exploration in the game was really surprising. It was very cool how you were able to jump down and find different areas in the area that the game presented, at least the demo, the story mode area. But just the view distance and just how dynamic the world felt as you went through it, it really did feel like you were a party of friends, different adventurers coming together and just helping save the day in this area that you were exploring. It was very surprising to me just how well. They incorporated the element of exploring and then throwing in combat sections, and there was no transitions, there was no sort of delay between fighting something and then moving on. I think the only time you would ever feel like you stopped was at certain fights. Gran would slowly put his sword away in his sheath, and I don't know if that was just closing off that section of the combat instance, or if that was just, you know, a random chance where you would stop and be a little cinematic with the ending of a battle. Going further with the combat, I think that the idea of taking down enemies is pretty unique in this circumstance. There's a lot of games that utilize two different types of gameplay when it comes to action combat. You could either have enemies who are really small and you can combo the hell out of them, and you can just send them flying and catch them in the air, and they literally can't do a single thing to you. And that's one way of going about an action game. And then there's another one where you've got enemies who are immovable. They stand still, they have a stagger bar, and then once you break them, then sometimes you'll be able to launch them, and other times you just do a bunch of damage and they can't do anything back. They're in a stunned, staggered position. And I feel like Granblue Fantasy does a pretty good job of juggling the two. You've got lower class enemies who are more susceptible to your combos, who are able to be launched in the air, who are able to be, you know, comboed and continued with the combo through your skills and teammates, and using your link attack to follow up on certain enemies that might be too far from you after you finish off your mob. There's a lot of dynamic movement throughout the battlefield whenever you're fighting with your party, and I'm really excited to see how things are going to progress whenever you unlock either different skills or whenever you're fighting as a different type of character, and how that's going to play out in certain scenarios. Maybe there's a boss that's really far away, and you need someone who's more long range, or a magic user would feel more comfortable. Or you just play through the whole game with your favorite character, and that you never change, and you just stick with it and let your teammates help you whenever you can. But yeah, I never found myself feeling too limited or restricted with the combat. I kind of felt like I was able to combo enemies whenever I felt like it. I was able to launch them, and I'm really, really glad that they have a input for being able to rise enemies up into the air to continue an air combo, because that, as a big Kingdom Hearts fan, that is something that I always love. Now, obviously, you can't do that to every enemy. The bigger enemies do take hits on the ground, and they can be sent back flying, but for the most part, you usually can't juggle those bigger enemies because they're just heavier set, they're on the ground, and that's when you need to change your fighting style a little bit to something that's a little bit more defensive, but weaving in big attacks whenever you feel like you're gonna get them on the ropes. Now, obviously, this is something that, again, would be very different for certain people. Some people might not like the aspect of not being able to juggle and take a big combo on a big enemy throughout the skies. I know that, like I said, as a big Kingdom Hearts fan, that's something that you were able to do no matter what the enemy was. It could be a car, and you could be juggling it with Sora's combos. But I just think that, you know, if I take those elements of Tales of games, different Tales of games like Tales of Vesperia and Tales of Arise, there's a lot of things that really remind me of those kind of games, especially Tales of Arise, with the big effects and all the different skills that are being tossed out from your party members while you're also going through it. But I found the limit burst and the full burst mechanic to be very, very cool, super dynamic, super cinematic, and it made me just think of how many, is there more super skills that you unlock? Does it depend on the type of weapon that you get? Does it depend on the party, the dynamic that you have, whichever party members you have in your group at the time? There's so many variables that can be introduced, and there's other things that the tutorial didn't really teach me, but I kind of figured out on my own. If you have a dodge and you time it to where you barely, it's like a last second dodge from a big enemy, you actually get some invulnerability, and that also helps whenever you're fighting the bigger enemies, because you kind of don't have that worry of being hit back or your combo being interrupted, and it was pretty rewarding, especially when you have that quick paced action going on, and you find yourself in this groove where you're getting all your hits on at the right time, and then you get that instant dodge at the last second, and it carries on into more of a combo that you didn't think you were able to pull off because now you have invulnerability for a little bit. It's just really, really rewarding, and it kind of reminded me a bit of Monster Hunter in a way, especially fighting the bigger enemies. You have this element of learning the attack patterns and also trying to maximize your damage before having to move back or block or dodge away. So wrapping up the story section, it was pretty simple for the most part, as expected from a demo. Most demos are like that. You don't really get into the meat of the story really in the demo. They just kind of give you the beginnings and kind of gauge the player into what they could expect from this world and what the characters are trying to accomplish, and see how it progresses from there. But after finishing the story, you do get this big cinematic piece of what to expect from the full game, and man, it just got my mind wandering about what these bosses would be capable of and what special abilities you could use with buffs and everything. I could really see myself getting some really good gear that could increase my crit damage and all of this stuff. There's just so much to be excited for, and the demo does a pretty good job of trying to showcase what you can do in the demo, but also what to expect in the future. Now, what was very surprising to me was that the demo also offered a multiplayer mode where you could actually queue up, and there was 3 individual missions that you could have to do with friends. You could invite friends to your party, or you could also queue up on your own and have players join you, other random players in the world. And I believe you could also just do it on your own with your own party if you'd like. So you've got some options here, and for me, I actually was able to get a friend to join along with me. I did one mission on my own, and then I did the other ones with a friend. And it was really, really fun, to say the least. I had a good time. I was surprised because I am not the biggest Monster Hunter fan. I've played a lot of Monster Hunter, and I've played a lot of different Monster Hunter games, and I've always found myself not too pleased with them because there's certain things about the Monster Hunter formula and how they handle their characters and how you move in that game that I just don't really find the most engaging and fun. And that's why I felt like this one, when it comes to Granblue Fantasy Relink, I enjoyed my time with the multiplayer and the Monster Hunter-esque aspect of the game a lot more because I felt like I had more freedom. I was able to move around and jump and dodge, and everything was you were able to cancel your attacks, and yeah, so taking a combat system that I'm a big fan of and then meshing it together with trying new characters that weren't in the story mode. Like my first character I picked was Lancelot, and yeah, I just found his playstyle to be super engaging. You were right in the enemy's face, and you have flurries of attacks that would unleash at light speed, and you had one of your triangle attack was actually a dodging attack, and it was really cool to keep a combo going while still doing damage on the way in from dodging around the enemy. But yes, if you're a fan of Monster Hunter, if you're a fan of that style of online mission mode where you're taking down big enemies, that is here for you. And there's also another mode where it's just I believe it's called a horde mode, where you can fight waves of enemies with friends, and I found both modes to be very, very fun, and I had a good time trying to figure out what these bigger bosses, the other mode, which was the opposite of the horde mode. It was just like a boss mode. You actually had mechanics that the bosses would do depending on the difficulty of how severe it was with those mechanics. I was very, very pleasantly surprised because I am a avid MMO player, and I know I've already referenced the Tales of series and Monster Hunter, but both of those series coming together is actually being done with another game I'm excited for called Blue Protocol, which is a online MMO. So this kind of made me feel like I was preparing for Blue Protocol. It had very similar aspects of what to expect. There was online multiplayer, there was boss battles and dungeons that you would do with other players or on your own if you'd like. And the only difference, of course, was Blue Protocol has a full-blown story mode that is also multiplayer. You can go through it entirely with a friend, and yeah, so this is just a more standalone, not free-to-play MMO, just RPG, single-player or multiplayer RPG that has a single price point, and then after that, you kind of just take it for what it is, enjoy the story, enjoy what the combat offers and different strategies that it offers. And yeah, if you find that excitement with the multiplayer mode, that is there too. I think the thing that stood out the most to me when it came to the multiplayer was the fact of the game keeping track of who was the MVP, who did the most damage, or who did the most healing, or whatever the gauge was of what they were trying to figure out who did the most of. You would get ranked on that, and then also your party's score, there was a rank system from, I believe, C all the way to like S++, or a perfect rank. And already instantly after finishing the first mission, I was like, oh man, I want to get the highest rank now. I want to go back and do better, be faster, destroy the enemies even better than I did last time. And I can also see that being something that's going to be really exciting to do with a group of friends if you do manage to get 3 other people to group up with you that you know of who also got the game. Playing alongside friends in the online mode really was rewarding, and I found myself wanting to go back and try missions again, and wanting to reach out online and find other people who might have downloaded the game so we can get a whole group going and try to get the best score, try to see which characters worked best with our dynamic, and what group could we get going that was our best bet. But this is something that I do want to bring up with my thoughts on the game. I want to very, very strongly stress the fact that this game, you know, it's a full price game, and if you are someone like me who you're not really into the world of Granblue Fantasy, you've only known it from afar and all of that, then that's something you might want to be aware of, because I already find myself thinking about how fun and how cool it'd be to find a character, make that my main character, and oh man, everyone's gonna know that my Lancelot's like really, really strong, and I know what I'm doing with this character. And finding friends and grouping up and going online and accomplishing all these hard, tough battles. But if that's something that you feel like you won't be able to get right out the gate, or something that is a little too hard to accomplish whenever the game releases, then I honestly say I would probably hold back on getting this game at launch, because it's a pretty big price point, and I feel like that's a really big selling point, the online multiplayer, and wanting to go for higher scores and wanting to get the best achievements done, and all of the different benefits for doing these online missions. That's a big selling point, and if it's something that you feel like you wouldn't have fun doing solo, then I definitely don't recommend diving into it right away. I feel like this game is something that you could probably find in a couple months after it came out for much cheaper, and then you'd probably still get the same amount of satisfaction either way. But if you exclude all that, if you want to look away from, you know, oh, is my money getting its worth, I just think that when you look at this game and what they've accomplished and what they've put on the table for you, I honestly can't complain. There's just a lot of really well-polished aspects to Granblue Fantasy Relink that I don't see very often. The world feels so alive, everything's so vibrant and beautiful. The characters having their own movesets and all of them being fleshed out in their own way is super impressive. And I'm really excited to see more from the story mode, and if that ends up being something that's very, very, you know, touching and impactful and a wonderful story with these characters with emotion and all that, then you can exclude all the things I said earlier and just, yeah, that, of course it'd be worth it. But that's something that I can't fully touch on or talk about, because obviously, as I mentioned before, this is a perspective from somebody who's not in the know when it comes to Granblue Fantasy. But yeah, to wrap things up, those are my thoughts on the game, on the demo at least. If you guys got any sort of insight from me on this video, I was glad I could help in any way. If you're unable to play the demo, I'm hoping that, you know, there's more accessibility with the demo in the future. If it comes to PC, that'd be great. Any of those kind of things would be really, really cool. But yeah, feel free in the comments to let me know. Did you play the demo? Did you play Granblue Fantasy Relink? Are you a fan of the series? Do you have a favorite character? What did you think of the demo if you played it? Or what did you gain from everything that I've said and other things that maybe other people have been posting online? I am still a little bit questioning if I'm going to be getting this on day one. I think it could be really fun, and I could have a good time if I could have a whole group of friends play this with me alongside enjoying the story on my own time. But I already know that 2024 is starting off really strong, and this game is, I believe, scheduled to come out on the 29th of January. So that's in between Infinite Wealth, Yakuza Like a Dragon, and also Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So it's a tough sell for me already, but it is a surprise hit in my opinion, and I honestly just had a really, really fun time. I'm excited to see what future bosses and what mechanics they would showcase, because from what the little cinematic showed after beating the demo, there was a lot to look forward to, and I'm gonna keep my eye on it. I'll probably wait to decide maybe a day or two before the game comes out, but if not, then yeah, this will probably be a game that I will obtain sometime in the future, because I liked it enough. I think that it deserves a fair shake, and there's been other games in the past that have done me wrong on launch, I'm not super heavily invested enough to find myself really wanting this right away, but you never know. I might give in and be like, wow, pretty anime fantasy game with really cool combat and an online multiplayer. I don't know. It might get me. We'll see. But anyways, if you guys made this far, thank you so much for listening to me ramble about Granblue Fantasy. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it insightful. And like I said, leave me a comment with anything that you might want to say or share that I might have overlooked, or maybe I was a little too passive on. But until next time, y'all, stay safe, stay beautiful, stay smart, and I'll see you next time. Love and peace.